Welcome to LabMinutes.com in the lab video series in Cisco ASA FirePower. You can find a complete list of ASA FirePower video on our website by clicking on the link above and sign up for our newsletters to receive the latest video updates. Now that we have our FireSight management system installed, we're next going to go through some of the post-installation configuration that I would highly recommend you to complete even before adding network devices. At the same time, we would start looking at some of the menus options in the web interface as well. So from a network diagram, we're still going to be concentrating on our FireSight server right here in the green circle in this video at the IP of 192.168.32.107. Alright, so now let's go back to our FireSight management server right here. This is where we left off at the summary dashboard after we complete our installation from our previous video. So the first thing that you probably want to do after the installation is to install the FireSight license. So hopefully at this point you have obtained the pack key from your order, and you can't really go ahead and register that pack until you have the server kind of installed, and that's because, so let me go to system right here. And don't worry about these menus, we're going to have a separate videos that will walking you through the whole web interface. So right now we're just going to configure whatever is relevant to the system for our post installation here. So if you go to the system menu and then under licenses, and once you click the add license, you will see that there is a license key that you will need to provide as part of the pack registration. So basically the license will tie to the license key of a particular server and is not immediately transferable between the server basically. And that's why you have to wait until your FireSight system has been installed to obtain that license key. And this is because that license key will be different between the different system installation. Alright, so here we kind of have gone through that process and we already have our FireSight license file. And as you can see, if you look at the content of the file, it also has that license key embedded in the header as well. So right here, the device, and now we can go ahead and copy and paste. So you copy, including the line right here that says begin SourceFire product license, and also including the end SourceFire product license. So the entire file, and the word FireSight right here is just telling you that this license right here is the FireSight license. Okay, so copy and paste, make sure there's no blank lines in between. There you go. Go ahead and submit the license. Before I do that, actually, you can also click get the license right here, and it will probably basically redirect you to a keyserver.sourcefire.com. But if you purchase your key from Cisco, then you usually go to the cisco.com/go/license. Okay, so you can click on get license just to show you what it looks like. And obviously there's a warning right here that if this is a Cisco product, then you need to go to the Cisco License Center to register the product instead of doing it on the SourceFire page. Okay, since we have that license key already, let me go ahead and submit the license. Okay, so if the license key on the server and the license file match, then you should be able to successfully install that license. Going back to the license page, now that we have the SourceFire license installed, you'll see that with our virtual appliance here that we're running instead of the physical FireSight appliance, our host can go up to 50,000 as well as our user counts. Alright, and here's our FireSight host, FireSight user, and the expiration date. So at this point, we're not going to go ahead and install the licenses for the managed device. We're going to do that when we deal with the adding the devices, the managed devices in a later video. Okay, so for now, all we need is just the FireSight license. Okay, the next thing we're going to configure here is under health. So this is anything related to the health of the system, starting off with the health policy. So right now, health monitor is all green, so that's what you expect in the fresh install. The first thing we'll be configuring here is health policy, and this is going to be tied to both the FireSight system itself and the managed appliances or the devices. So by default, there's an initial health policy that we're just going to work out of that. So when we click edit, and instead of leaving the policy name as the default policy name, we're going to call it LM health default. Okay, and let's go through some of these options real quick. And these are system related parameters that you can adjust. Things like run interval is 5 minutes. Advanced malware protection always turn on, although we're probably not going to go through all of the menu just to save you some time, but definitely kind of, if this is the first time installing the system, kind of go through and familiarize yourself as far as the available options that you can adjust. So some of the things we're going to do here, for example, is CPU usage. Let's say we want to monitor the CPU usage of the system. By default is off, so we want to enable that. So anytime the CPU spikes above 80 or 90%, we can be alerted for it. Okay, and we kind of go through this card reset. If you want to have the system monitor the network card and reset it if something wrong is detected. So click on that. Let's see what else we can do here. Discovery event status, same thing. Let's go ahead and turn that on, and making sure that any kind of discovery will be reported for, and we'll deal with the discovery process in the later videos. This status, this usage, so on and so forth. Like I say, probably not going to go through all of these. The last thing that I want to enable is user agent status monitor. I want to turn that on as well since it's off by default, and this is relating to the connection to the user agent that will be installed on a machine that needs to integrate with the AD for the system to basically query the AD for user and group information. And again, we'll deal with that later on in the video, but we just want to have that enabled right now. Okay, let me go ahead and save the policy and exit. So that's for the health policy. And notice here that as soon as you make the change to the policy becomes out of date on the appliance, which is our FireSight system. So we need to go ahead and apply that by clicking on this green check mark right here. And select the system and click apply. Okay, now that we have the health policy kind of configured, let me jump back to the health monitor. So this is basically an overview of your system, including both the FireSight system itself and also its managed devices. Okay, so if there's any warnings or critical or errors on any parts of your system, it will show up right here, and then you can kind of drill down and figure out exactly what's causing that error as well. Okay, since we have nothing to look at right now, I'm just going to keep going here. Next is health events, and this is basically the list of events of each health check. So anytime the system performs the health checks of your system or devices, it will come back and report you the status, whether it's pass or fail, and then you can look at what exactly failed and when the failure was detected by the system. So you can see some of the things we can spot here is disk status, process status, license monitor, disk usage, and things like that. Okay, so these kind of things will run periodically, and you'll be alerted for it if that's set up when something or this failure is detected. All right, next on the menu, just going to go through all the menus under health menu here. So next is blacklist. With the blacklist option, if you want to remove your system from any health monitoring process, then you can come under here and click on it and basically blacklist the device. And this is usually done when you perform maintenance on the systems. You know the system will be unavailable for a certain period of time, so that way that with the system being offline, it doesn't really skew your health statistic. And clearly, once you set or mark the device by being blacklisted, then you can clear it as well once you're done or want to put that device back under the health monitoring. And then we have health monitor alerts, and this is where you set up the alerts for the health checked. And since we haven't really had any type of alerts configured, so we're just gonna kind of skip through this page and then come back later on this video so once we have the alerting process or methods configured. Okay, so that's pretty much everything you need to know under the health menu. So next we're going to move on to the system menu, and similar to the health policy, there's also a second type of system policy it's called system policy. When you click under that, there's also already a default system policy that got generated as part of the FireSight system installation, similar to the health policy we just saw. So we're going to modify that as well and use that. So click on edit. Then we're going to update the policy name to LM system default. All right, since we don't have that many options here, let's go through it real quick. Access control preference, we're going to leave it default. Access list, this is the allowed ports on the system that the user can access. So by default, it's just 443 and for the HTTPS and 22 for SSH for the command line. So we'll leave that as default as well. Under the audit log settings, this is for if you want to send where the syslog messages to your syslog server when there's a change or updates on the audit log as far as people making changes on the server. You can do that also right here. Next for the Vindication Profile, and this is if you want to map the external user group, whether it's for using Radius or LDAPT to a local user profile. This is for admin accessed. If you don't want to use the local user admin, instead you want to use an external database, then this is where you enable it right here, and we will have a separate video dedicated just for that. For a dashboard, and this is if you want to enable custom analysis widgets, and by default it's checked, so we'll leave that checked. Database, this is the threshold or limits as far as the amount of events or number of events do you want to limit to be kept in the database, and we'll leave that as default as well. DNS cache enabled by default. Email notification, this is to set up the email notification for alertings if you have the email alerts set up. So we're going to go ahead and do that. As far as our mail relay host, we have a server with the name smtpout.labminutes.com. is actually this server we're on right now. It's just an alias on the DNS record for SMTP. So that's what we're going to use. Port number will keep the same. Encryption method, we'll just say none, just to keep it simple. From address, we have, just for this video series, we have set up a email account that we can use. Call security alert at LabMinutes.com. And you can just do a quick test mail server setting as well. To send for a quick email test, we can just have it send to itself. So security alert at LabMinutes.com. Okay, so definitely recommend have an email account set up dedicated just for this purpose. And you can see right here, as soon as we have that test email sent, I also already have a Thunderbird email client kind of connected to that account already. You can see the email came in as soon as we sent out the test email. So right here, this is a test message. So we know our email alerts system is set up correctly. Next is intrusion policy preference. We're just going to leave the comments and policies optionals and the other ones default as well. Language is English US by default. Login banner, if you want to present a login banner to user, you can do that there. If you want your monitoring system to pull SNMP, you can set up your community strings right here as well. It supports version 1, 2, and 3. We're going to skip the STIG compliance, and time synchronization, another important part of configuration. You want to make sure you configure properly for time synchronization. NTP is your enable with NTP server configured. Okay, there are two parts here, just to make a quick note. The first part is for Defense Center time synchronization, and the second part is for the server, NTP server for your managed device to use. Okay, preferably they should be the same system so we can ensure that the times are in sync. Next is user interface, and this is a browser session timeout. By default is 1 hour, and then we also have shell session timeout as well. Okay, the last one here is vulnerability mapping, and we're not going to talk about this. As you can see, there's a lot of options here. Just going to leave it at default, and then we go save policy and exit. All right, hopefully it didn't go too fast here, but if I did, then definitely spend a little bit more time trying to understand each of these settings. Okay, once again, so we made changes to the policy, so the policy and the appliance becomes out of date. So we need to do the same thing like as what we did earlier with the health policy, which is to apply that policy. Okay, so click apply and select the device that you want to apply the policy to. Okay, now the policy has been applied. We're kind of done with that part of the option, which is system policy. Now we're going to go back to system and local and then configuration. Okay, so let's go through some of the things that we have here. So right off the bat, we have the system names, and this is what we specify during the post-installation setup. And then it tells you the product is a virtual defense center. The software version is running. OS version, IP address, and the current policies, and we just apply those so you can see it show up as the health default and the system default. Okay, next is HTTPS certificate. If you want to regenerate or upload a different certificate to use for HTTPS access, then you can do it right here. As far as database, FireSights allow you to connect to external database. If you choose to do so, then you can also do it right here. Next is the network configuration. If you want to make changes to your network parameters of the server after the post-installation kind of setup wizard there, then this is where you would change it. IP address, subnet mask, default gateway. If you all of a sudden wants to configure it IPv6, you can do it right here also. Hostname, domain name, DNS, MTU, and if your system or your network environment has the proxy server, HTTP proxy server that the FireSight system needs to go through to get to internet, this is where you configure it as well. So right now we don't have that. This is why we have the direct connection selected. Okay, next is the management interface, and since it's a virtual machine, not much you can do here. It's just all you can do is the negotiation on off, and that's pretty much it. As opposed to if this was a physical appliance. Next, under the process, this is where you can shut down the server, reboot the server, or restart the console. Okay, but I highly recommend doing that from the command line instead of this web interface. Next is on time. This is to check the time synchronization of your server. And you can see that's telling you that the NTP is being used for this is whatever is defined as part of the system policy that we just configured. That's why we did that first before we came under this menu. And it tells you the current time as well, and also the status of the NTP server. Okay, it looks like currently we have correct time synchronization here. Remote storage device, if you want to expand the device to storage outside of your local storage, then you can see that it supports NFS, SMB, and all that. And then you can specify your remote storage if you require additional storage. And the last option here is change reconciliations. So what we're going to do is to enable, so that way we will be receiving reports of any changes made to the system in the past 24 hours in the email. So we can have it run, say, midnight, and then let's say we want to have it emailed to the security alert email that we just set up. Okay, security alert, and you can include policy configuration as far as all the change history. Okay, go ahead and save.